Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Your Knicks lose by 11 to the Sixers in Game 3. Joel Embiid takes more free throws than the entire Knicks team. And to top it off, he was able to do that after trying to intentionally injure two Knicks players. Next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks, and we want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. I'm Alex Wolfe. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. He is Gavin Schall, favorite play-by-play broadcaster, and this is Locked On Knicks. And Gavin, I wanted to start this episode off with an apology real quick. To anyone who's ever listened, I want to apologize for ever suggesting that the Knicks should trade for Joel Embiid at any point. I now realize the error of my ways. He's a bum. He is a loser. He's a dirty player. And I don't ever want to have to force myself to root for him on my team because he is the most unenjoyable basketball player to watch I've ever seen in my entire life, which was confirmed after this game. And to top it off, also the most unlikable basketball player of all time. So I'll throw that to you. But yeah, sorry for ever suggesting that. You will never hear another mock trade for Joel Embiid out of my face again. It's never happening.
All right, well, thanks for that, buddy. Good lob for me. I almost don't know where to start. I guess
I can jump right back in if you want.
Yeah, sure. No, I think the only place to start is the first half that Joel Embiid put together that included opening the game with hitting Hartenstein in his little Hartensteins and basically like elbowing him in the stomach, like all in one motion, and the tone was set pretty early there. And then about halfway through the first quarter, probably should have been out for the game. Not probably. He should have been out for the game, grabbing Mitchell Robinson's ankle in midair when Mitch would have had a dunk after the game. Embiid was saying he did it because of how Jonathan Kuminga injured his knee, and he had flashbacks to that injury, quote unquote, got to protect myself, even though Mitchell Robinson, as far as I can tell, was not going to land on his body during that play. And it was a pretty clear attempt to prevent a dunk. I'm sure everyone has familiarized themselves with the difference between a flagrant run and a flagrant two. A flagrant one is a necessary contact committed by a player against an opponent. A flagrant two foul is a necessary and excessive contact committed by a player against an opponent. I don't know how that couldn't have been deemed excessive outside of the fact that it was Joel Embiid. And of course, it would take away public interest in the game if he was out early. It would take away public interest in the series if Joel Embiid went out and the Knicks went up 3-0. So, of course, it was ultimately not called a flagrant foul. Zach Zarba basically gave a non-explanation in which he essentially just defined both and said they thought it was the definition of a flagrant one. Taking a guy out of the air is about as blatant of a non-basketball play as you can have, about as dangerous of a non-basketball play as you could possibly have. And to make matters worse, Embiid was not done there. I think the play that Mitch escaped that somehow relatively unscathed, where Mitch actually got hurt, is when he committed like a quote unquote foul on Embiid, which was a really light touch foul, if you want to call it that. And Embiid decided to just fall forward, roll right on Mitchell Robinson's injured ankle. And of course, Mitch, the one guy who's had kind of consistent success guarding him this entire series, who was the only Knick with a positive plus-minus in this game in his 12 minutes at +7, because, again, despite those 3 fouls, he was doing a pretty decent job guarding Embiid, and the Knicks' kind of one option to physically match Embiid was then out for the game and maybe out for the series for all we know. And then Embiid paraded his way to the line for 21 free throw attempts. Has to be said, Alex, because I based on what you said initially, I don't think you're going this direction. Embiid, whatever you want to say about him personally, is a titanic talent of a player, made 5 threes in the second half, 13 and 19 from the field, was basically unstoppable, regardless of what the Knicks did to guard him, was certainly aided in that attempt by a very generous whistle, living at the charity stripe, 19 to 21 from there. And despite Jalen Brunson fully getting back on track in an electric 39 point, 13 assist performance. None of it was enough for the Knicks to pull out this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can argue that Embiid had a really good set shooting game. It's really easy to do that though when the obvious implication is that the other team is not allowed to defend you without getting a foul called. So if you get to shoot practice jumpers all day, it's pretty easy. I mean, he made a couple that were pretty tough. Hartenstein did manage to get a hand like fully in his face on some of those threes. I hope he could shoot 5 of 7 from 3 from every game though, because that's pretty much what it took, along with the 21 free throw attempts to beat this team. Yeah, I want to go back to the attempted injuries though, because I thought they were disgusting, man. I mean, I don't know how the first instance was not called a flagrant foul.
I mean, let's just say real quick, like that would have been enough to get him out of the game right there. Like 2 flagrant ones, that would have been it, even if that wasn't quote unquote excessive on the second.
Right.
Play.
And
go ahead. Sorry.
The absolute joke of that whole situation is that on that first one where he kneed Hartenstein in the balls and then elbowed him in the kidneys on his way by, that was initially called a foul on Hartenstein. Like that should tell you everything that you need to know about this game. I mean, look, if you watch NBA basketball, if you even just play basketball at the park, you understand how things work. Like when one team scores or is done on their possession, you know, that team gets down the floor first, you set up, you wait for the other team to come back down, and then you engage, right? And there's going to be, especially between centers in a normal game, there's, you know, some hands being thrown around. Fine. And you know what? Like we see this sort of stuff all the time. And this is how, you know, guys like Hartenstein are always talking about how much they get scratched and whatever. And that's fine. Like basketball is a physical game. So some hand tussling, whatever, totally, you know, above board. That's fine. And guys like kind of making contact with each other, whatever, fine. But 50 feet away from any basketball, so there's no way to justify it being a basketball play. And B comes down the court and intentionally throws a knee into someone's groin and then swim moves over their head and intentionally throws an elbow into their ribs to like double them over. I don't understand. Like, that goes beyond the pale of just average, like, you know, hand checking and, you know, getting your body into each other, trying to establish position, all that stuff. I don't understand how that wasn't a flagrant one. The one on Mitch could have legitimately been a career ender. And the fact that it wasn't was a small miracle. Unfortunately, Embiid was allowed to stay in the game and then did, to your point, injure Mitch later. So he accomplished his mission, which was clearly to injure Mitchell Robinson in this game. He also had a really nice Draymond Green-esque kick out that just didn't quite connect the way that he wanted it to, but kicked his leg completely out into Mitch's groin at one point. And tried to take him out of the game that way. It was the dirtiest single game I've seen from a player. And you and I have lived through the Draymond Green era. So it's really saying something to say that this is the dirtiest game that we've ever seen. But the difference is that Draymond Green gets thrown out of games when he does dirty things to players. And Joel Embiid apparently is too important to be thrown out of games. So the NBA left him in. And not only that, rewarded him for that behavior. It was... I would have the smallest modicum of maybe like sympathy or whatever, or not sympathy, but like, I can't even say respect. I don't know. I would be slightly less angry today if he at least like owned it after the game. But then the comment about the Kuminga thing, like, oh, it was PTSD, like, oh, it's just protecting myself. It's like, dude, he was jumping away from you. There was zero chance he was going to land on you in that scenario, unless one of your guys came in and like body checked him or something, which that's on them if they push another player into you while you're on the ground. So that whole thing annoyed me. Nick Nurse's flippance about the whole thing makes me think that it was all intentional, where he got asked after the game, like, what did you think about the flagrant fouls? And he literally just responded, oh, I didn't see them. Like, oh yeah, I bet you didn't. I bet you did not. What, did you avert your eyes because it was too much to look at or something? Like, get out of here. I don't know. It was a horrible game. It was a horribly officiated game. And, you know, we can get more into it in the next segment about the actual basketball fouls that they were calling or whatever, or we talk about Jalen Brunson for a little palate cleanser for a little bit. But it was one of the most disgusting basketball games I've ever watched in my life. And it started with a guy intentionally trying to injure Knicks players and ended with that guy being rewarded with 21 free throws for the whole game. And I hated it.
All right. I want to. I still want to get into the first half a little bit because I thought it was an overall brilliant game for Jalen Brunson. I thought it was the best offensive half the Knicks have had this entire playoff. So we'll talk about that a little. Maybe we'll get a little bit more into Embiid. All that and more next on Locked On Knicks. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drivers and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. The 2024 Nissan Armada will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com.
And this next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. And yeah, I mean, if you can't tell, I'm a little heated today, a little angry today. I think it's because, honestly, you get an emotional attachment to these players when you cover them for a long time, and when you're a fan of the team for a long time. And Mitchell Robinson, longest tenured Knick, getting repeatedly targeted by a player on the other team, it makes you want to go beat that player up. Makes you really angry. Makes you want to vent on a podcast for an entire segment about how dirty that player is and how he doesn't deserve anything in his NBA career ever. But, I could bring this up with a therapist. I could also bring up more serious issues I talk about all the time. My fear of not resonating with people, my worries about just work and in general and all that stuff. So there's lots to get out if I, pursue actual therapy, which maybe I should. And if you want to do that, therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team or Joel Embiid. And it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. So visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, Gavin, we're back in to keep talking through this Knicks loss. And if we can leave Embiid aside for a few minutes before we get back into it to end the show. I refuse to let that one completely off at this point. But I thought that we saw, I agree with your statement to end the last segment. I think this was easily the best offensive game that we've seen out of the Knicks in this series. I mean, honestly, even if you look at like the percentages up and down the board for both teams, it was very similar. Like the Knicks wound up shooting almost 50% for this game, 48.9%, 43.3% from three. I thought that they were moving the ball as well as they have all series. Brunson, 39 points, 13 assists. I mean, this is the sort of game that you expected out of him the whole series. He ends with 12 free throw attempts. Like, I question that number a little bit because it seemed like towards the end of the game, he was just kind of getting token free throw attempts when the game was already out of hand. I think he totaled 8 of his free throw attempts in the final 5 minutes when the game was mostly being taken care of at that point by the refs. But yeah, I thought that the Knicks were moving the ball well. I thought they were finding shooters in rhythm much better. We saw OG Anunoby finally kind of take off a bit. We saw Josh Hart continue his hot shooting, hitting 4 of 8 threes. I think the only guy that we really didn't see get going from 3 was Donte DiVincenzo, who got hit in the eye early in the game. And then, I mean, he claimed it didn't affect anything, but it seemed a little off shooting the ball. Obviously had an amazing cut for a huge Thunder dunk in the first half in this game. But yeah, I thought this was a well-rounded offensive effort, and it was all driven by Jalen Brunson having easily his best game of the playoffs so far.
Yeah, he was electric. I mean, I said the first 2 games of the series, beyond the fact that I thought the Sixers played exceptional defense on him, and you had to give them a lot of credit. He didn't look like he was moving all that well. And this game, I mean, you could see the 3 days off and what it did for him, because he looked electric. Like he was like totally back to like thick jitterbug mode. That's my new Brunson nickname, apparently. And despite that, I was a little wary the first few minutes of this game, because he missed 2 shots that just looked a lot like how he started first possession of the game. He started every single game the same way, which is forcing up an elbow jumper with someone on his hip. And I was sort of like, all right, here we go again. Like it's not going to be good. And then Josh Hart pushed the pace, got Brunson a wide open wing 3. Brunson missed a wide open 3 after that. He was 1 for 4, and you were sort of cheatering. You're like, all right, is this going to be the night? And then it was the night. I mean, from that point forward, he shot 12 for 23. Finished the game 3 for 7 from 3. I guess was 2 for 5 from 3 from that point forward. And I mean, the biggest thing to me was just that he got all the way to the rim, and that's been real estate that's essentially been like impossible for him to get to this entire series. And I have to do a rewatch to determine, like, all right, what was ultimately the difference in Embiid not being there, waiting for him at the rim. But a lot of times Embiid was in the vicinity and he just didn't totally care. Like the Sixers went zone at one point, and he was almost like a running back hitting a hole and said, you know what, I'm just going to get there. And so many times we've seen him stop short. And I think Tibbs probably showed him clip after clip and said, hey, like even if Embiid gets to a few and blocks a few, like you just have to get closer to the basket. And Brunson did it a bunch of different ways. Like one time, like had a nasty screen reject to beat Oubre, like quick gather on Paul Reed to beat him to the rim for a layup. Like Mitch and Hartenstein, I thought were both just much better screening in this game. And he was able to just get more room coming off of screens. And that kind of gave him a running start. And then once he got that confidence, I mean, it was over for the Sixers. Like we kind of saw the quintessential crazy shot making that's defined this season, like an and one pull up on Kyle Lowry, a 3 in Oubre's eye, like a circus layup, while basically getting flattened in the final few minutes of the game. And the passing was great for him. Like I didn't love his decision making. Like it would just kind of come in fits and spurts, but he basically single-handedly drove Hartenstein to a 4 for 4 start in this game. Was hitting bogey for 3, was hitting OG for 3s. Like it was all good, about as good of a game as he could have played, where it's discouraging, because I think coming in the way the Knicks had won the first 2 games, if you told us, hey, you're going to get 39 and 13 from Jalen Brunson, we would have said, all right, it's going to be 3-0, and we're heading into game 4 with the chance to sweep the series. And unfortunately, because of everything that went down with Embiid and the way the Sixers shot the ball, that ultimately wasn't the case. But Alex, I don't know if you want to go positive or negative, because there were 3 other Knicks and Hartenstein, and Anunoby that had great games. And then to your point, they needed a lot more from DiVincenzo, and they continue to need a lot more from Bojan Bogdanovic offensively, who's clearly battling through an injured wrist.
Yeah, I mean, Bojan, you could see really aggravated that at one point. Went for a loose ball, came up immediately clutching the wrist. It was a shame too, because it was honestly a really good defensive play by him. Like if he had been able to save that ball, it's probably 2 points for the Knicks, because he was in position to potentially kick it to someone sprinting towards the hoop on a little just sort of scoop pass along the side. Just couldn't quite get to it in time, and winds up falling on the wrist, and it was just not it seemed like it's bothering him, even though it's on his non-shooting wrist. I want to highlight Hartenstein real quick. I thought that he had a fantastic game again. I think that he, more so than anyone, obviously dealt with the issues of not being allowed to breathe on Joel Embiid in this game. There were at least, I mean, he wound up with 5 fouls in, what was his final minute total? 28 minutes, 26 minutes. And I thought 3 of them were not fouls. I mean, I thought he did as good of a job as you could have reasonably expected guarding Joel Embiid, often just standing there with his hands in the air and having Embiid throw his body into him and draw fouls that way. The one that stood out the most was when he was contesting a 3-pointer. I believe that was Hartenstein that was on that coverage, where Embiid shot a 3 and Hartenstein was just standing there contesting it and got called for a foul, for a 3-shot foul. I think that was the point where the Knicks sort of understood that this game was going to be out of hand and they just weren't going to win it, unfortunately. But yeah, I thought that he played great. His floater continues to be just disgustingly automatic. I mean, it's like clockwork. It's becoming like the skyhook or something
Yeah,
for him.
Alex, over 2 games, he made 11 of 12 shots, which is like starting at the third quarter through like the end of the first quarter, like just a crazy stretch because those aren't easy shots.
No, I mean, the push shot, the little floater like that requires arguably the most precision of almost any shot in basketball because you can pretty much bank on there's no bailout. Like if you shoot a 3 and you overshoot it, there's always that chance you're going to get the bank, if you really grossly overshoot it. If you overshoot a floater, it's probably just clanking off the back rim and you're done. Like there's very little chance of that working out for you, and his just goes straight, drop into a bucket every single time. I thought it was a fantastic game for him. Maybe we could keep the positive going before I erupt again on some more negative stuff. We could talk about OG Anunoby, about Josh Hart, and their contributions to this game. Maybe even Precious Achiuwa a little bit because I really liked what he did in some limited minutes when called upon. So we can talk about all that in just a second. But first, we got to let you know about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Maybe the NBA could post some listings for new refs after this. I mean, they're a little small business. They're looking for some help. Or maybe they're not looking for the help. I don't know, but they should be. And if they do, they should probably use LinkedIn. I think that would be a good place to go find some new refs. Because LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And not only that, LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Gavin, we're back in to keep talking through this Knicks game. I'll throw it to you in case you wanted to add anything on Hartenstein from the last segment, but otherwise, we definitely had great games from Anunoby and Hart to talk about as well.
Now, I want to move on to Anunoby, and that's maybe just taken for granted that Josh Hart, third straight playoff game with 4 straight threes, which is insane. Yeah, I mean, he was great, but I'll start off with Anunoby, just because the Knicks really desperately needed his offense. 7 for 11, 3 for 4 from 3, 17 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. Would have been nice to see him shoot a free throw. Of course, that didn't happen, and I mean, he needs to be a little bit more aggressive, consistently going to the rim. Also, again, Knicks are just not getting a ton of calls the way the Sixers do. But I thought it was a great sign that, I mean, to open the game, he hit that contested corner 3. I was like, all right, maybe it's finally going to be a good offensive night for him, because you can go through his game log since he came back from the wrist injury. They've been few and far between where he's actually had volume scoring in any way, but you could tell from the get-go, like that was an emphasis from Tibbs saying, hey, we're not in the comfy confines of MSG anymore. We know we're not going to get a good whistle. Like, we need a consistent secondary source of scoring beyond is what I'm trying to say. Josh Hart just getting really hot from 3, and Anunoby said, bet coach, I can do that. And they ran him off an iHart screen with Lowry trailing, collapsed the Sixers D, flipped it back to iHart for the push shot. I mean, even the play where Mitchell Robinson got the dunk, that was, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, off an Anunoby rebound where he just kind of shuffled it to him. But Anunoby, like, consistently was able to draw a lot of attention inside. Started off this game playing fantastic defense on Tyrese Maxey. Maybe it fluctuated a little as the game went along, though. I thought when Maxey got cooking, it was mostly when Anunoby wasn't on, but Maxey didn't score a single point through 6 minutes. And Anunoby also had one of his classic, just like, oh, my arms are 5 inches longer than you thought possible, poke away for a dunk. pump and go jam on Kelly Oubre, had 11 points with 4 minutes to go in the second. And that was the only bummer of the night for Anunoby, because that was pretty much the end of his scoring. Like, had a stretch in the fourth where he hit the back-to-back threes, which was great. Had one more really nice pass in this game where he had a rebound, like, and just drove like the length of the court, Nash dribble under the rim, and then found Josh Hart for an open three. I thought it was a step in the right direction for him. I almost want to see more. Like maybe this is too much to ask for and just isn't who he is at the end of the day. But it feels like physically, like, he could get to 25 points in this series. It doesn't even have to be a great shooting game. Like, he just has a strength and size advantage on whoever's guarding him. And every single time he drives, Alex, it looks really good to me. And I want to see him force the issue more. I know that's not totally his nature. I know that's a lot to ask, but I want more from Anunoby offensively. And honestly, I kind of think the Knicks are going to need it to win this series.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, I think that, if the Knicks get that out of him and they're able to win the series as well, then it sets them up very well for going forward. I think the biggest thing for Anunoby is, like, the 3-point shot has to come around first, and then everything else comes into place for him. He's sort of similar to Josh Hart in a way, where I think that, but except for he obviously has much more, like, baseline 3-point shooting talent to make this happen on a regular basis. But if teams start respecting him from three and start assuming that the threes are going to go in when he gets the ball, his first step off the dribble there, or like when he puts the ball on the floor and starts his dribble, is insane. And we saw that in this game. I thought that was, like, the big thing for him, was that first dribble, getting by his man, and then just getting inside and being like, well, Joel Embiid's not going to beat me at the rim here, because he's scared for his life, apparently, of getting injured again. And nobody else on that team has the physical profile to match an OG Anunoby at the rim. So he knows if he can get that first step, he's just going in for a dunk, and that's what's going to happen, and nobody can say otherwise. And that's, we've said it before, but that's the big differentiator between him and anyone else on this team, is that the Knicks haven't had that long, poppy athlete in a while, that can just go in there and just throw down thunder dunks whenever he gets around the rim. All apologies to Obi Toppin, of course, who just kind of, like, had trouble with creating the first step advantage that he needed to get those all by his lonesome, other than, catching them off dunks, or off alley oops, I should say. But yeah, I thought it was a fantastic effort for OG. I hope we see more of the decisiveness from him like that. He even took and made one or two of my least favorite shot from him, which is the pull-up midi. But if he's feeling it like he was in this game, go ahead, dude. Take a few. Like, hopefully they go in more than your career average. But, whatever it takes to get him to that confidence level and wanting to, attack the basket like that is totally cool by me. Josh Hart, too, we definitely got to highlight as well. 20 points, 6 boards, 6 assists in this game, 8 of 16 shooting overall, 4 of 8 from 3. I mean, Gavin, I don't know how to even, like, continue talking about what we're seeing out of Josh Hart in this series at this point from 3. It's just so out of character for him to be this hot from 3. I guess the only stretch you can really, like, relate it to would be either his first stretch when he got to the Knicks last year before the playoffs, during the regular season, when he was as hot as he was from 3, or maybe when he first got traded to Portland. He averaged like 19 points per game for the whole back half of the season for them, the year before he got traded to the Knicks. We're just seeing, like, a completely different player out there. I mean, it's honestly like I know this is total sacrilege, but, like, at some points when he's shooting the 3 as well as he is right now, it's like Kobe-ish. You know what I mean? Like, it just has that quality to it where when he starts making those, you just go like, oh, all right, like, we're in for something different today. Like, this is going to be a big game for him. And, I know that that's a player that he idolized a lot. So I'm sure if he would hear that, that would mean a lot to him. But I'm obviously not implying that he's Kobe, but there are certain times where the way that he goes about the process seems very similar to him, when he's really cooking there. And I thought this was just another in a string of really fantastic games for him. And, I'm with you. I don't know, like, how sustainable this is long term, which is why it's kind of troublesome and why you need more out of, like, Donte DiVincenzo on a game-to-game basis. But as long as the Knicks are getting this from Hart, I'm really happy with it. And, like, honestly, good for him that he's figuring it out this way in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's 12 for 23 from three. He's now made more threes in 3 playoff games this year than he did in 11 playoff games last year. So that's ridiculous. All the hustle plays were there, went at Embiid, finished over Embiid a couple of times. I mean, he's just been so solid. You cannot hope for more from him. And you're just, I don't know, if you're like me, you're just kind of clenching at this point. You hope that cold shooting game isn't around the corner, because to your point, if it is, they're going to need someone else to step up. And I'm my mind went to the same exact guy yours did, Donte DiVincenzo, who let's put game 2 aside, because he was unquestionably awesome in game 2, 4 for 8 from 3. In that one, the defense was amazing. Obviously made what's going to go down as one of the iconic shots in Knicks history. So nothing to question there. The other 2 games, a combined 2 for 8 from 3. And I care less about the 2, Alex, and more about the 8. He's just not getting up the volume of threes that you want. I mean, we could even look. I mean, he's averaged 5 3-point attempts per game this series, after averaging just under 9 in the regular season. Post the Julius Randle injury, he was averaging double-digit 3-point attempts, and that's an element of the Knicks offense that's desperately missing right now. And again, I thought generally, like, when he sought them out, he was getting good looks off of handoffs. And one of the plays I think that deterred him from shooting more, he shot an air ball off a handoff from Hartenstein where he got wide open and he was begging for a foul on the play. What, as best as I could tell, what happened was Hartenstein kind of turned around and he bumped into Hartenstein, and DiVincenzo thought Maxey bumped into him and wasn't called. And I think that kind of deterred him from shooting the rest of the game. And it's a shame, because he got off to a really good start in this game, even though it wasn't like a ton of scoring. Like, he was just really aggressive, like blowing by Lowry, setting up Hartenstein for a good shot, blowing by Lowry again, getting to Embiid, and ultimately missing a layup. We mentioned that back cut. I mean, he had one great back cut where he got hit in the eye, the other back cut where he just had the vicious dunk. At that point, I mean, you could have strapped me to a chair. I was losing my mind. And went through Oubre for another layup. Like, I thought he played well. He played with some force. The volume just has to be there for DiVincenzo. And I think coming into game 4, there has to be a really conscious effort from Tom Thibodeau to get him going early, because if not, you just have a feeling that the Knicks ultimately aren't going to have enough firepower to match the Sixers, because it's pretty obvious. I mean, the big Embiid issue aside, that the Sixers role players are just much more confident playing on their home floor. I mean, Oubre had far and away his best offensive game of the series, 15 points on 8 shots. Cam Payne, who'd only played 2 minutes the entire series, scored 11 points in 16 minutes. Maxey stayed hot. And like, if this is going to be reality with Embiid, or the whistle's going to be a little bit better, however you look at it, you're going to need more from the supporting guys for the Knicks that aren't named Josh Hart or Isaiah Hartenstein, both of whom have just been great these last 2 games.
Yep, I'm with you. And I promised I would bring it up one more time. So I'm gonna close my my remarks on the show. Maybe this will just be the close of the show, because I think we're both pretty much done with talking about this one. But just on the free throw disparity one more time. So I'm gonna highlight it one more time here. The Knicks shoot 19 free throws in this game. The Sixers shoot, by the end, 33. Joel Embiid with 21 by himself. As many made free throws as the Knicks had taken free throws. I guess, all right, because I'm seeing all the comments online about, like, people being like, oh, well, this is comeuppance because the league admitted that they missed a call in the last 2 minutes or whatever. I have a Sixers fan friend who I'm even talking to, like, literally, I've been talking to all day, being, it was like, well, this is just like, it's like ball don't lie. It's like, the Knicks, got the last call, so the Sixers got this one. I think there's a huge difference in what happened between game 2 and game 3. And it honestly, I don't know. It's discouraging as a fan. I can understand. I mean, Knicks fans know better than anybody this year, the discouragement of one missed call blowing your game or whatever. We had that happen multiple times during this season, notably to the point at one point where the Knicks tried to contest the result of the game because it was so blatant. So certainly know that pain more than anybody. But to see politicking pay off this heavily in real time is actually crazy. I give Tibbs and the rest of the Knicks a ton of credit for going at it hard in the press conferences last night, calling out the officiating, calling out the fact that there was not a flagrant 2 called on Joel Embiid for trying to injure Mitchell Robinson intentionally, and all that stuff. But there's also just, I don't know, this game more than any that I can remember in recent memory, felt extremely one-sided in terms of how the officiating worked. And it sort of seemed like a makeup game, sort of like you might see a makeup call throughout the course of a game, which sucked. It was not fun to watch. I hope that the Knicks get a more down the middle officiating crew, whether they call it like they did in game 2, where they basically called nothing on either team, which I thought was fine. It ultimately ended with a very entertaining game. Or they call it more like a tight game where they're trying to reel these guys in, which honestly, at this point, I'm kind of hoping for after Joel Embiid tried to injure Knicks players multiple times in this game and was not thrown out of the game. So I don't know where we're going in this series, but I'm really curious to see what game 4 holds. It seems like there was just a clear case to be made for playing the media game going into this game, because the Sixers got everyone on their side media wise, and just kind of ran with it, and the refs ran with it too, and we saw how it resulted in real time. Yeah, I don't know, that's all I got. I could be called a crybaby, whatever. I don't really care at this point, because it was just, that was the worst game I've ever watched from an officiating standpoint in the history of my time as a basketball fan. So I just felt I had to say something in that regard. But Gavin, unless you got anything to add, I think we could probably wrap this one up. So thank you all, everyone, for listening. We'll talk to you soon. We'll have a recap, of course, of game 4 for you guys to start next week off. But until then, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.